Hi, this is Sewing Mojo with buttons. So there are many different types of buttons. Today I'm only going to be using two types, and there's also many types to sew on buttons. Again, I'm only going to show two types. So first up, I'd like to mark where I'm going to put the button, especially if I'm making a pattern or I am using it for clothing. I want to have a guesstimation of where it's going to be. So I like marking with either a pencil or a fabric marker. And once I have this done, I then will break out the needle and the thread. And these are the two buttons that I'm going to use. I'm going to use the 4-hole button first and then the 2-hole button. And again, these are only two types of buttons. There are many different types of buttons. And once I have my thread all ready to go, I'm going to go up from the bottom and I'm going to make a little X where I have it marked. Now you don't need to make this little X, but this little X will tell you exactly where your button's going to go. So if you need to shift it over maybe an inch or so, this makes it so it's easy to just seam rip what you've already sewed, the little X, and then make adjustments and move it over. So I'm just going to continue doing the little X. And then I'm going to grab my 4-hole button. And I'm going to just put the button on the fabric over the little X. And I'm going to go from underneath up into one of the holes. Now for this, you technically have two different ways. You can either go side to side or you can go diagonal. I prefer going diagonal, mainly because of how it looks. I feel like it's a cleaner look. And so once you've done one, you can let go of the button. It should stay in place. And then I do that 3 to 4 times. And I just keep doing, and it just keeps the button in place and prevents any moving or any movement from happening. And once I have this done, I go on and I move to the other side. And again, I do 3 to 4. Now you could technically interchange them, do one and then do the other, but I like going one at a time. So this is a very good button, especially for decorations, and you could use it on clothing, but as you see, it would rise off the fabric. So there is a second way that will help with this. After I've already had my little X, I'm going to grab my 2-hole button and a pencil or a toothpick. I would recommend a toothpick because the pencil is pretty big and can cause a little bit of a problem at times, but I'm going to use it so that way you can see it better, and so that way when it's done, you can tell exactly what the pencil is done. So I'm going to put my pencil onto the fabric over the X. Now I do have to pay attention to where the X is, and even though it's a 2-hole button, I did use an X just because I know that the button is in fact going to cover the X, and it tells me exactly where it's going to go. And so after I've decided I'm going to put my pencil down, I'm going to grab my thread. And now this part can get a little bit tricky because you have to hold not only the toothpick and the button, you also have to hold the fabric, and you have to do that all with one hand. So I'm going to come up from the bottom once I know exactly where my X is at, and I'm going to come up and go through one hole, and then I'm going to go out the other one. Nice and easy. Now for this one, unlike the other one, I do this one about 5 to 6 times. And this is mainly because of the fact that the button can move around a lot, but also because of the end result. So as you can see, this is how the other button turned out. And this one, oh, I dropped my pencil. As you can already see, it's lifted up off the fabric instead of being directly on the fabric. And this is why having a toothpick in between the fabric and the button is important for this method. And, oh, I got it stuck a little. There we go. And you just want to keep on doing it. And again, I prefer doing it 5 to 6 times. If you prefer it 3 to 4, then that should be just fine. And I just continue doing this. Now, as you can see, there is, in fact, a little bit of, well, I just covered it, but one of the threads was a little bit looser. And so I'm just going to continue doing this. And then once I'm done, I'm going to go up and through the bottom of where the pencil reaches the button. And I'm going to wrap my thread around the threads that were holding the pencil in place. And I'm just going to keep on wrapping. And what this does is it creates a lift. So now the button is lifted off the fabric and can be easily used. So see how it's a little lift? If you're using a toothpick, this lift will be a little bit smaller. But while the other button is a little bit more stuck, this one has a little bit more of motion. So then you would just go down, hide it, and you would then tie off. But those are 2 ways of sewing on buttons.